October 12, 2015, Brad Young, a lawyer at TripAdvisor, walked into his office in Needham, Massachusetts, expecting another routine day. When he saw the email, his boss's wife had received a robocall. A friendly voice promised her an exclusive vacation offer in exchange for her TripAdvisor credits. There was just one issue. TripAdvisor didn't do robocalls, and TripAdvisor credits didn't exist. The person who initiated this call was also found to have allegedly done 98 million more. That one call led him into a sprawling investigation that would unravel one of the most deceptive robocalling schemes in American history. A scheme led by a man known as the robocall king, Adrian Abramovich. So how did one man pull off this many phone calls? And find out how one bored employee managed to crack an international robocall ring. At the heart of this story lies Fred Garvin, a TripAdvisor employee from its anti-fraud team, one of the most cynical people you would ever meet. He isn't a cop, he isn't a private investigator either. But when TripAdvisor needs someone to chase a robocall scammer hiding behind layers of digital camouflage, Garvin is the obvious choice. Brad Young forwarded him the robocall case. Garvin had only one thing to begin with, the call itself. A robotic female voice. A message about TripAdvisor credits. A too-good-to-be-true vacation in exchange for something. Press 1 to learn more. Garvin's first step was obvious. Try calling the number back. But when he did, he reached a confused human, completely unaware their number had even been used. That's when Garvin realized something more complex was at play. The scammer was using a trick called neighbor spoofing.
Neighbor spoofing is used by scammers to get you to pick up your phone and to potentially steal your money or personal information. Spoofing happens when the calls you get appear to be local. The number used to call you might have your same area code and local exchange, but in reality the call comes from somewhere else. Once you're tricked into answering the phone, you can become a bigger target for more robocalls.
This technique left behind no real trail, leaving Garvin to hit a dead end. So he pivoted. He began answering every suspicious number that lit up his phone: tax scams, student loan relief, lottery winnings. He took every call, logged every detail. While the rest of America groaned at robocalls, Garvin welcomed them. He was hunting. What's more, Garvin discovered dozens of posts on the company's forums. Furious users swearing vengeance, threatening to call the FCC, but the details didn't match up. The same robotic voice, sure, but once transferred to a live operator, every offer was different. One user heard about a Caribbean cruise, another was promised a beachfront resort. Prices changed, offers changed. To Garvin, it felt like chasing a ghost. The deeper Fred Garvin looked, the messier the mystery became. As he combed through the platforms, he began collecting all the company names mentioned by the callers. That's when it clicked. The websites tied to those offers weren't unique. They all looked the same. Identical photos of sun-drenched beaches and featured images of tourists, copy-pasted text, generic logos, vague company description. He traced the hosting information. The servers were in Mexico, the contact numbers and emails too. Some of the domain registrants shared addresses. Others used identical back-end software, and nearly all of them linked back to resorts in the Yucatan. It all pointed to a booming industry in Mexico, call centers serving American customers. He started mapping it out: resorts, fake businesses, call centers. Every connection went on a whiteboard in his office at TripAdvisor's headquarters. Piece by piece, he was drawing the shape of something hidden in plain sight. Then, he found a crack in the wall. Scrolling through Facebook, he found a photo posted by an employee of one of the call centers. A young man standing proudly at his workstation. Behind him, taped to the wall, a piece of paper with printed text. Garvin zoomed in. It was a company name, a website, the target for the day's calls. He followed the thread. Over weeks, then months, he watched that same employee get promoted from caller to manager to owner. He began advertising job openings for his own call center. Garvin now had leads he could follow in real time. He started tracking more employees, looking for hiring ads, photos, anything that might reveal names or numbers. And he wasn't alone anymore. He recruited victims to help. One woman, Kim, was getting over 10 robocalls a day. After reaching her breaking point, she called TripAdvisor's CEO directly. He called back, assured her TripAdvisor wasn't behind the calls, and handed her over to Garvin. Later, it turned out that it wasn't just TripAdvisor being impersonated anymore. The calls claimed to come from Marriott, then Hilton, then Expedia, and the offers, while technically real, were just fronts. Anyone who managed to pay and actually book a vacation was met with high-pressure timeshare pitches. Many never got anything at all. Garvin and Brad Young assumed it was the call centers themselves, along with Amy Rubin, an attorney who was the third member of the investigation team. They found out where the calls ended up and how people were getting scammed, but they still didn't know who was making the robocalls or how to stop them. After more than 3 months of digging, they decided to seek help. Brad Young contacted the FCC ready to compare notes. The agency had already been chasing a surge in spoofed robocalls. A few months earlier, the network of a US paging company had been flooded by a massive wave of traffic, millions of calls that triggered old-school pager systems and caused real damage. Emergency departments couldn't get messages through. Hospitals were affected. The FCC took it seriously. When Young and the FCC met in Washington, something clicked. TripAdvisor had the content and the motive. The FCC had the volume and technical data. Together, they could see the full picture. Then, finally, an amazing development occurred. On July 29, 2016, Garvin was visiting family when he received a much-awaited call. The number looked spoofed. He bolted from a conversation, grabbed his notebook, and answered. The call opened with a voice he'd heard 100 times, telling him he'd received thousands of TripAdvisor credits for an exclusive vacation. This indeed was his lucky day. He played along, got transferred. A live agent picked up, friendly, smooth, asking him what he'd like to do on vacation. Garvin improvised, telling him he liked sitting by the pool and having a cocktail. He was asked if he made over $60,000 a year. He said yes, passed the filter, was transferred again. Now came the pitch, an all-inclusive trip valued at $4,000, offered that day for $999. Credit cards accepted, Visa, MasterCard, American Express. A perfect lead-in to the scam. But Garvin stalled, claimed he needed to check with his wife. The agent pushed. Better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Still, Garvin got what he needed, a callback number, a company name, and a bit more data to trace. He hung up and drove straight home, then stayed up all night connecting the dots. He scoured social media, ran searches through Mexican telecom databases, cross-referenced names, numbers, and keywords. By morning, he had it. The names of the operators, the man who ran the call center, their locations, their social media trails, all tied back to the TripAdvisor scam. While Garvin pushed deeper, Young sent cease and desist letters to every call center they'd identified. Some ignored them, others denied any wrongdoing. But one call center cracked. Whether out of guilt or fear of prosecution, they dropped the final detail. They were paying someone else to do it, a man in the United States, first name Adrian. They even had his number. Young brought it straight to the FCC. This was more than just a brand protection issue. It had become a federal matter: mass spoofing, identity theft, potential violations of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. TripAdvisor's team had uncovered a real-world criminal operation hiding behind digital smoke. And now they had a face to go with the calls: Adrian Abramovich. The FCC launched a full investigation. They subpoenaed records, analyzed call logs, pulled data from VoIP providers, and began compiling the full scale of Abramovich's activities. The results were staggering. He wasn't sending out thousands of robocalls. He was responsible for 96,758,223 robocalls. It was big enough to catch the attention of the US Senate. And the fine? Historic. The FCC proposed a penalty of $120 million, the largest robocalling fine ever levied. The robocall king had finally been unmasked. It looks like TripAdvisor had gone looking for a scammer, and they'd found the king. After nearly a year of investigation, the FCC had charged Abramovich with operating a massive spoofing scheme, violating multiple federal laws and causing widespread consumer harm. It wasn't just the volume, it was the audacity. He impersonated trusted brands. He spoofed phone numbers to make calls look local. He flooded emergency paging systems with fake signals. And worst of all, he defended all of this by claiming that he was running a legit business, just playing the bridge between businesses and Mexican call centers. The FCC's case was built with help from TripAdvisor, Fred Garvin, and Brad Young. Without their evidence, the recordings, the names, the number traces, the operation might have stayed buried. Now, Abramovich sat in front of a panel of US senators facing bipartisan fury. Senator Richard Blumenthal didn't hold back. He called him the face of this problem, a man who had become the symbol of robocall abuse in America. Senator Ed Markey, who wrote one of the very laws Abramovich was accused of violating, Telephone Consumer Protection Act, called the scope of the scam historic. He asked, "Do you understand why people are furious? Why they want these calls to stop?" Abramovich barely answered. He admitted to running the calls, but he insisted they weren't scams. The vacation offers were real, he claimed. Just connected to timeshare pitches, nothing illegal about that. He didn't create the deals, he just connected customers to companies, some of them in Mexico, others elsewhere. He even tried to relate to the public frustration. "I get 4 or 5 robocalls a day," he told the senators. "I never answer the phone." What's more, he claimed he couldn't afford to pay the fine. Behind the scenes, journalists began digging into his life. One reporter tracked him down to a gated community in Miami. He answered the door wearing a tight Lacoste shirt and distressed jeans. His wife joined moments later. Eventually, they invited the reporter in. Inside, Abramovich's man cave told its own story. Figurines and posters of infamous villains lined the walls: Scarface, Freddy Krueger, characters from Goodfellas. A record collection sat next to an 80-inch television, plush leather chairs, a sleek black couch, a work desk in the corner. This allegedly was the headquarters of one of the biggest robocall operations in history, a home-built empire of spoofed calls and fake pitches, powered by off-the-shelf software and endless bandwidth. But Abramovich wasn't celebrating. He looked exhausted, angry, and defensive. He insisted he wasn't rich, no yachts, no hidden condos, no stacks of untraceable crypto, just debts. He said he was on payment plans for everything, including the Ferrari in the garage. He resented the spotlight. He said the hate mail was endless. His bank closed his account. His daughter was present when US Marshals arrived to deliver the subpoena. He felt like a scapegoat, a man chosen to be the villain because the real problem, robocalls, was too massive to stop. "I'm not the bad guy," he said, but no one was convinced. And even though Abramovich was caught and fined, the story wasn't over, because robocalls didn't stop. They just evolved. Millions of calls, thousands of targets, hundreds of leads, a few conversations. That's the math. And the risk, minimal. The infrastructure is almost invisible. VoIP providers rarely ask questions. Most robocallers use disposable accounts, rented servers under aliases, or bounced calls through obscure carriers. Payments are often made in cash or crypto. Records are slim, if they even exist at all. Anyone with a few $1,000s, a laptop, and some time could replicate what Abramovich built. The technology is still out there, the loopholes are still wide open, and the demand from scammers, marketers, and shady businesses is still growing. What Abramovich ran was a template. By the end of 2018, Americans were receiving nearly 200 million robocalls per day. Spoofing grew more advanced. New operators filled the vacuum. They used the same software, the same tricks. Some even used Abramovich's exact methods. The FCC admitted what everyone already feared. This wasn't a war that could be won overnight. One commissioner called it like emptying the ocean with a teaspoon. They could go after one scammer, one case, one fine at a time, but the tide kept rising. And Fred Garvin, he never stopped. He's still working at TripAdvisor, still chasing scams, still answering calls most people block. Now, he uses burner email addresses, fake credit cards, decoy personas. He logs patterns, matches voices, traces leads through digital trails the way some people do crossword puzzles. Every day, every spare minute for the thrill of the solve. He thinks he's identified 5 or 6 robocallers by voice alone, the same voices showing up across different scams, months apart. He's even started researching where robocallers find voice actors. Maybe, he thinks, if you cut off the source of the voices, you can slow down the calls. He has another idea too, a radical one. What if Americans didn't hang up? What if they answered every robocall and played along, wasted the scammer's time, killed the scam from the inside by choking off conversions? Even he knows it's just a fantasy. The FTC tells people the opposite. Don't engage, just hang up. But for Garvin, it's personal now. He's watched how deep these operations go, how often the same tricks resurface, how little the law can really do. He doesn't expect to stop robocalls completely. He just wants to make it harder for the next Abramovich. In his office, 4 phones sit charged and waiting. They ring all day long, and he answers every single one.